अरे भाई, इसे क्यों मार रहे हो? ये बच्चे हैं, आखिर गलती तो हो ही जाती है, इन्हें माफ कर दो।
होटल में बर्तन धोते हैं फिर भी ये धोखे सोते हैं। होटल में बर्तन धोते हैं फिर भी ये धोखे सोते हैं। होटल में बर्तन धोते हैं फिर भी ये धोखे सोते हैं। खेतों में खलिहानों में भी सबका जाता बचपन। रोजी रोटी के घर में भी सबका जाता बचपन।
पर माटी में सोना रूपा के भंडार भरे, तोरे अक्षरा में मधुर भरल जे बयार बहे। पर माटी में सोना रूपा के भंडार भरे।
आज के इस कार्यक्रम में नंदिता जी आप बीच में जाइए, आप लोग आगे बैठे। आज के हमारे, जैसे आप सभी को पता है कि हमारे इनागुरल सेशन के उद्घाटन करेंगी केरल के शिक्षा मंत्री, हायर एजुकेशन मिनिस्टर डॉक्टर आर बिंदु। उनका हम स्वागत करेंगे, वो अभी आने वाले हैं, आ चुके। बहुत बहुत माफ़ी चाहती हूँ। बहुत जोरदार ताली से हम एक अच्छे राज्यों से आए हैं और जहाँ पर शिक्षा को लेके ज़बरदस्त काम किया जा रहा है। मैं उनका स्वागत करती हूँ ऑल इंडिया पीपल साइंस नेटवर्क, भारतीय आत्म विज्ञान समिति और बाकी संगठन की ओर से। प्रोफेसर सुखदेव थोराट जी हैं, वो यूजीसी के पूर्व चेयरमैन हैं, वो हमारे साथ ऑनलाइन जुड़ेंगे, अपनी बात को रखेंगे। प्रोफेसर अनीता रामपाल जो पहले डीन रही है स्कूल ऑफ एजुकेशन दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी और शिक्षा भी दे, उनका भी हम स्वागत करते और आग्रह करते कि वो मंच पे आए। हमारे बीच में डॉक्टर एन वर्गीस जो वाइस चांसलर थे, पूर्व वाइस चांसलर न्यूपा के हैं, हम उनसे भी आग्रह करते कि वो मंच पे आए। हम सभी साथी उनका जोरदार ताली से स्वागत करेंगे। वर्गीस जी। भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति के राष्ट्रीय सचिव डॉक्टर काशीनाथ चटर्जी से आग्रह करते कि वो भी मंच पे आए। इस बात के साथ हम पुनः हम सभी साथी ऑल इंडिया पीपल साइंस नेटवर्क, भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति, एडवा, एडसो, आईफेक्टू, ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन ऑफ राइट टू एजुकेशन, ऑल इंडिया फेडरेशन ऑफ आंगनबाड़ी वर्कर एंड हेल्पर, आईसेक, डीटीएफ, फेडकुटा, जैक, जेएनयू टीचर्स एसोसिएशन, आरटी फोरम, स्टूडेंट फेडरेशन ऑफ इंडिया, स्टेट टीचर्स STFI की ओर से हम फिर आप सबका स्वागत करते हैं। इसकी शुरुआत हम, क्योंकि आपको पता है पूरा देश में पिछले 2 महीना से ऑल इंडिया पीपल्स साइंस नेटवर्क भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति की ओर से देश के विभिन्न जिलों में जत्था न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी हमको नहीं चाहिए, उसके क्या कमजोरियां हैं, वो किस तरीके से एक तबके के बच्चों को पूरा स्कूल से बाहर करता है पढ़ाई से, इसको लेके हमारे कला जत्था के साथी प्रदेश के देश के विभिन्न हिस्सों में जत्था का प्रदर्शन किए, वो संदेश देने की कोशिश किए। तो हम इस प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत हमारे जत्था कलाकारों से ही एक गीत से हम इसकी शुरुआत करेंगे।
पाठशाला खुलवा दो सरकार,
पाठशाला खुलवा दो सरकार,
पाठशाला खुलवा दो
साथियों, इसके बाद मेरी जिम्मेदारी खत्म होती है। आगे पूरा संचालन की जिम्मेदारी हमारे 3 अध्यक्ष मंडल के साथी।
धन्यवाद आशा जी. A very warm welcome to all delegates to the National Education Assembly. I am Satyajit Rath of the AIPSN. सभी को सलाम नमस्ते. शुरुआत करते हैं और पहली शुरुआती बात है, we have a short film on the AIPSN BGVS campaign against the National Education Policy, and the first order of the day is to present that film. So I call upon that film to be presented on the screen. Let me bring up the next item on the agenda, which is a brief presentation on the AIPSN BGVS campaign against the NEP, and I call upon Asha Mishra, General Secretary AIPSN, to present that, and hopefully the technical issues will be resolved by then, और हम फिल्म भी देख पाएंगे.
अध्यक्ष मंडल और सभी साथी, आप सभी को पता है कि ये न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी 2020 एक इस समय हमारे सेंट्रल कैबिनेट ने अप्रूव किया जिस समय हमारा देश महामारी के कोविड-19 की महामारी से परेशान था, लोग परेशान हो रहे थे, लोगों को दवाई नहीं मिल रही थी, ऑक्सीजन नहीं मिल रहे थे और मृत्यु का तांडव चल रहा था। हमने बहुत अपने नज़दीकों को खोया और ऐसे बहुत लोगों को हम जानते नहीं हैं जो हमसे अलग हो गए होंगे। इस समय इस सरकार की जिम्मेदारी थी कि लोगों तक स्वास्थ्य का मुहैया करे और लोगों की जीवन एक सरकार के नाते बचाने की उनकी जिम्मेदारी थी। लेकिन ये सरकार को उससे कुछ नहीं था। उनको इतनी जल्दी थी कि उन्होंने 29 जुलाई 2020 को इसको पारित किया और उस पर बहुमत नहीं था, उन्होंने उसको पारित कर दिया। इतने ऑन डेमोक्रेटिक तरीके से किया, तो ये एक तरीके से ऑन डेमोक्रेटिक पॉलिसी है। इसके बारे में मुझे ज़्यादा बोलने की ज़रूरत नहीं, क्योंकि यहाँ सभी जितने मौजूद हैं वो सब इसके बारे में लगातार पिछले 2 वर्ष से संघर्ष कर रहे हैं और जानते हैं। हमने ऑल इंडिया पीपल साइंस नेटवर्क और भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति, जिनका शिक्षा बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट मुद्दा है और लगातार हम शिक्षा को लेकर काम कर रहे हैं, और उनके लिए शिक्षा, जिनको शिक्षा बिल्कुल नहीं मिलता है, वो आदिवासी, दलित, अल्पसंख्यक, महिलाएं और गरीब से गरीब, उनके साथ हमारे पीपल साइंस मूवमेंट लगातार काम कर रहे हैं। सोचा पैंडेमिक लोगों के स्वास्थ्य को लेके, लोगों के को खाद्यान्नों को लेके, भोजन उनको देने के लिए, उनके उस आगे चल के उनके बच्चों की शिक्षा को लेके हमने अनेक राज्यों में हमने कम्युनिटी लर्निंग सेंटर चलाए। वहाँ के कार्यकर्ता के द्वारा, वॉलंटियर्स के द्वारा, ताकि हम सोच रहे थे, हमने एक स्टडी किया था, उससे हमको समझ में आया इस पैंडेमिक में इन बच्चों के शिक्षा के ऊपर कितना असर पड़ रहा है। बच्चों को, लोगों के पास रोजगार नहीं है, लेकिन लोगों को आप ऑनलाइन के थ्रू पढ़ाने के लिए हमारे सरकार प्रेरित करते हैं। और आप जानते हैं कौन सा तबका उस पढ़ाई से अलग हो गया। उन तबके के लिए हमने सोचा कि अगर हम नहीं करेंगे, एक जमीनी स्तर पे काम करने वाला संगठन नहीं करेंगे, तो ये बच्चे, बड़े पैमाने पर बच्चे पढ़ाई से पुस्ट आउट हो जाएंगे, धकेले दिया जाएंगे। इसलिए हमने उनके ड्रॉप आउट को रोकने के लिए, उनके पढ़ाई की जो इंटरेस्ट खत्म हो रहा है उसको बनाए रखने के लिए हमने कम्युनिटी लर्निंग सेंटर शुरू किया है। इसके साथ साथ हमने तय किया है, जब ये ड्राफ्ट था उस समय हमने इसको लेके काफ़ी काम किया, 2 तरीके से काम किया। एक, हमने क्या किया कि पॉलिसी लेवल पे इंटरवेंशन, ये हमारा पहला चरण का जो हमारा कैंपेन था कि हम पॉलिसी लेवल पे कैसे इंटरवेंशन करेंगे। हमने एक अलग अलग तरीके से अपना पोजीशन पेपर बनाया कि हमारा क्या पोजीशन होना चाहिए, वैज्ञानिक और शिक्षा, विज्ञान और शिक्षा को लेकर काम करने वाले संगठन का हमारा क्या पोजीशन होना चाहिए। हमने पोजीशन पेपर बनाया और हमने राज्यों से लेके हमारे नीचे इकाई तक पोजीशन को लेकर लगातार कैंपेन करके लोगों को समझ बनाने की कोशिश किया। उसके अलावा हमने राष्ट्रपति, भारत के राष्ट्रपति और अलग अलग राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री है, उन्हें हमने अपने रिकमेंडेशन दिया। जब ये बन गया, ये पॉलिसी बन गया, उसके बाद हमने सेकेंड फेज का कैंपेन हमने शुरू किया। ये कैंपेन हम 12 नवंबर से लेकर 30 अप्रैल तक का हमारा ये कैंपेन था। इस कैंपेन में हमने तय किया कि हम क्या क्या करेंगे, और हमने किया है। एक, हमने तय किया कि हम इसको किसी भी तरीके से, हमारे कैंपेन केवल ऑल इंडिया पीपल साइंस नेटवर्क और भारत ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति का एजेंडा नहीं होना चाहिए, बल्कि जितने साथी काम कर रहे शिक्षा को लेके, उनके साथ मिलकर हमको कैंपेन करने की जरूरत है। इसलिए हम राष्ट्रीय स्तर पे भी ऐसे संगठनों को लेके, आप सबको पता, याद होगा, हमने दिल्ली में सभी संगठनों के साथ, शिक्षक संगठन, अध्यापक संगठन, छात्र संगठन, सबको लेके, महिला संगठन को लेके हमने एक बड़ा नेशनल लेवल का कन्वेंशन किया था। उसमें हमने अपनी रणनीति प्लान किया था। उसी तरीके से हर राज्य में भी हमने कोशिश किया कि इस तरीके से कैसे एक ब्रॉड बेस कमेटी बने और उसके माध्यम से हम इसको काम करें। इसलिए हमने कमेटी का रखा। कई डायलॉग करते हुए, कई बैठक करते हुए हमने कहा कि ये क्या एजेंडा होगा, सेव एजुकेशन सेव द नेशन। यानी नई शिक्षा नीति अगर लागू होती है, हो रही है, तो इसलिए हमारा देश नहीं बचेगा। हमको शिक्षा को बचाना है तो हमारे देश को बचाना है, क्योंकि हमारी सरकार चाहती है कि शिक्षा न हो ताकि वो अपने मनमाने तरीके से अपनी कानून अपनी नीतियों को लागू कर सके। इसलिए हमने एक सेव एजुकेशन सेव द नेशन हमने कैंपेन किया है। उस कैंपेन का कई था, एक कैंपेन का हमने क्या था, हमने अलग अलग तरीके से न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के अलग अलग एस्पेक्ट्स को लेके हायर एजुकेशन, रिसर्च, वोकेशनल एजुकेशन, स्कूल एजुकेशन अलग अलग हमने अलग अलग पेपर बनाया था। हमने उसको साथ हमने ऑनलाइन उस समय कार्यक्रम किया, उसके साथ साथ हमने ऑफलाइन भी किया ने नीचे तक राज्य स्तर पे, जिला स्तर पे, ब्लॉक स्तर पे, गांव स्तर पे हमने डायलॉग कार्यक्रम किया। हमने बहुत सरल भाषा में लोगों के साथ कैसे डायलॉग किया जाए, तो हमने डायलॉग संवाद कार्यक्रम ने ऑर्गेनाइज किया। यह पूरा संवाद कार्यक्रम हमारे देश के 22 राज्यों में किया है और आज खुशी की बात है पूरा इस 22 राज्यों में से हमारे नॉर्थ ईस्ट से भी नागालैंड, मणिपुर और जम्मू कश्मीर से भी साथी यहाँ पर मौजूद है, क्योंकि उन्होंने इस चीज़ को लेकर आगे कैंपेन किया था। तो हमने डायलॉग कार्यक्रम, संवाद कार्यक्रम नीचे तक किया। संवाद का मतलब ये नहीं था कि हम केवल अपनी बात को रखें, संवाद का मतलब ये भी था कि हम समझे, जाने भी कि लोग इस नीति से कितना प्रभावित है और इसको उनको क्या समझे। तो संवाद कार्यक्रम मैंने ऑर्गेनाइज किया। दूसरा हमारा बहुत बड़ा हमने कार्यक्रम तय किया था, वो है कि हम किस तरीके से हम एक कला जत्था का हमने प्लान किया था। हमने न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी को लेके अलग अलग तरीके से राष्ट्रीय स्तर पे, उत्तर भारत में, सदन में, ईस्टर्न राज्यों में अलग अलग जगह पे हमने नाटक और गीत तैयार करने का कार्यशाला किया। और नाटक गीत तैयार करने के बाद हमने कला जत्थाओं को ट्रेनिंग देके हमने जत्था मूवमेंट किया। कुछ हिस्सों में अभी जत्था मूव कर पाए, कुछ हमारा 30 अप्रैल के बाद जत्था का प्लान होगा। इस तरीके से हमने 4-5 राज्यों में जत्था हमारा मूवमेंट हुआ। अभी हम देखते हैं तो लगभग हमने कोशिश किया करने के लिए जत्था हमारा जो मूव हुआ, वो हमारा जत्था देश के 78 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स में हम जत्था लेके पहुँचे। वो आदिवासी इलाके में, चाहे झारखंड का हो, बिहार का हो, मध्य प्रदेश के आदिवासी इलाके में जत्था पहुँचे, नागालैंड, मणिपुर में और आसाम में भी अभी होने वाला है। बट ऐसे जगह पे हमने जत्थों का किया। ये जो साथी अभी ये हैं वो 31 मार्च से लेके और आज 30 अप्रैल को आपने पहुंचेंगे, तो 1 महीना वो पूरा अलग अलग जगह पे जत्था का प्रदर्शन किया है और लोगों को कम्युनिकेट करने की कोशिश किया। फिलहाल आपको बताते हैं, जब ग्वालियर चंबल, मध्य प्रदेश का जत्था जब ग्वालियर चंबल में इलाके में आता है तो भिंड से वहाँ पर जितने भी साथी आरएसएस के साथी हमारे जत्था देखे, उन्होंने तुरंत पुलिस को इन्फॉर्म कर दिया। पुलिस का टीम आ गए तो हमारे साथी लोगों ने जत्था का गाने का बदल दिया कि किताब आपको क्यों पढ़ना चाहिए। तो थोड़ी देर पुलिस इधर उधर देखा, फिर चले गया, अरे तो अच्छी बात करते हैं, इन्होंने क्यों हमको ऐसे फोन किया। उस तरीके से जब ये जत्था हमारा आता है मुरैना आने से पहले सीआईडी से फोन आता है कि आप क्या करने वाले हो, किसके बारे में बात करने वाले हो। नहीं, हमारे साथी बोले हम किसके बारे, हम तो कैसे बच्चों को गुणवत्तापूर्ण शिक्षा मिले इसके लिए हम लोगों को मोटिवेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं हमारा। तो आप अपना कोई पर्चा दे दो। हमारे साथियों ने हमारे मांग को पकड़ा दिया, ये देखिए ये हमारे मांग है। तो ये कोशिश करते रहे मुरैना में कि पकड़ने के लिए, लेकिन हम डर रहे थे। मध्य प्रदेश सबसे ज़्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड स्टेट अभी है, बहुत ज़्यादा संचालित करती है आरएसएस हमारे प्रदेश को, तो उस पर भी पे करके आगे। उसी तरीके से झारखंड, उससे बिहार, उड़ीसा, इन राज्यों में, मणिपुर, नागालैंड में जत्था हुआ। तो हमने लगभग इतने जिलों में हमने जत्था को प्रभावित किया। हम इस पूरा को देखें तो फिर हमने जो काम किया है 22 राज्यों तक हमने पहुँचे, 240 डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स पे हमने पहुँचे, 369 ब्लॉक्स में हम पहुँचे, 50,000 से ज़्यादा हम गांव तक पहुँचे। और हम ये डायलॉग जो किए हैं, ये डायलॉग हम 10 लाख से ज़्यादा लोगों के बीच में जत्था और डायलॉग के माध्यम से जो लोग पहुँचे वहाँ पर हम स्कूल मैनेजमेंट कमेटी, पेरेंट्स और बच्चे, टीचर सबके साथ में डायलॉग करने की हमने कोशिश किया है। उसके साथ बाद में लगभग हम डोर टू डोर कैंपेन जिसका हमने रखा दस्तक अभियान, ये दस्तक अभियान हमने घर घर जाके पर्चा लेके बात किया, दरवाजा खटखटाया, ये लीजिए ये पर्चा है हमारा और आप बताइए आपके बच्चे क्या पढ़ते हैं, हमारे ये सब बातचीत करते करते न्यू एजुकेशन पॉलिसी के बारे में उनको बताया, उनसे भी हम समझने की कोशिश किया। उसके अलावा जिन राज्यों में मर्जर के नाम से स्कूल को जो क्लोज हुआ है, उन जगह पे उस ब्लॉक में, उस गांव के सामने स्कूल का, उस ब्लॉक में स्कूल के सामने हमने प्रोटेस्ट किया। ये पूरा मिला के हमारा जो है जो हमने कैंपेन किया, कैंपेन वो करते करते आज हम उस तरीके से लोग हर राज्य में, राज्य स्टेट असेंबली किए हैं और आज हम नेशनल असेंबली में राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा अधिवेशन में हमें बहुत बड़े पैमाने पर हम लगभग 28 जिलों में, पश्चिम बंगाल में भी हमारा जत्था शिक्षा और साइंस को लेकर हमारा जत्था भी मूव किया है। तो ये कुल मिला के हमारे कार्यक्रम में, और पूरा डिटेल में राज्यों के बारे में नहीं बताऊंगी, और हमने एक छोटी सी किन जगह पे हमने अपना काम किया, एक छोटी सी फिल्म बनाई है, छोटी सी है, उस पर पूरा नहीं नजर आता है, लेकिन ये बात है कि आज जो हम नेशनल एजुकेशन असेंबली कर रहे हैं, चूंकि जमीनी स्तर पे हमने इतना काम किया, इसलिए आज हमारे पूरा देश के 22 राज्यों से 375 डेलीगेट साथी यहाँ पर मौजूद है और बाकी संगठन के साथी है। तो मुझे लगता है कि आगे भी ये हमारा संघर्ष जारी रहेगा। बहुत खुशी की बात है, हम एक नहीं है, हमने स्लोगन यहाँ पर लिखा है। हाँ, ये 1 2 10 की बात नहीं है, ये सब की बात है, हम सब की बात है, हम सब की बात है। शुक्रिया।
एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और, एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और, उजियारा लाने का एक जतन और, एक जतन और। हो 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 कब तक सहेंगे इन कड़वे अंधियारों को, कब तक न पाएंगे अपने अधिकारों को। हो कब तक सहेंगे इन कड़वे अंधियारों को, कब तक न पाएंगे अपने अधिकारों को। कब तक बढ़ेगी हो कब तक बढ़ेगी सीने में घुटन और एक जतन और। हो 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 एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और, एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और। सीखने का हौसला ही सबसे बड़ी हिम्मत है, साथ साथ चलना ही सबसे बड़ी ताकत है। हो सीखने का हौसला ही सबसे बड़ी हिम्मत है, साथ साथ चलना ही सबसे बड़ी ताकत है। मिलकर ही जागेगी हो मिलकर ही जागेगी एक लगन और एक जतन और। हो 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 जतन और अभी एक जतन और, एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और। एक जैसे दुख है, एक जैसा है अंधेरा, हम तुम मिलकर ढूंढ लाएंगे सवेरा। हो हो। एक जैसे दुख है, एक जैसा है अंधेरा, हम तुम मिलकर ढूंढ लाएंगे सवेरा। मिलके हम बनाएंगे हो मिलके हम बनाएंगे एक गगन और, एक गगन और। हो हो हो। एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और, एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और। उजियारा लाने का एक जतन और, एक जतन और। एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और, एक जतन और एक जतन और अभी एक जतन और।
अब मसले को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। अभी गीत सुना था हमने कि मोराजिया पढ़ने को चाहे, मोराजिया लिखने को चाहे, तो मोराजिया समझने को भी चाहे भैया। शिक्षा का हेतु क्या है और उस हेतु की सफलता लाने के लिए किस तरीके, कौन से तरीके अपनाए जा सकते हैं और ये जिम्मेदारी किसकी है, ये सब बुनियादी सवाल हैं। And to think about these fundamental questions about intentions, about responsibilities, about practices, has multiple levels where we take broad perspectives, we also take detailed looks at strategies. This session with our inaugural speaker and the eminent speakers to follow her will handle the broad perspectives, and in the parallel sessions we will deal with somewhat more detailed issues. And in order to move that matter forward, I call upon Professor Nandita Narayan, Chair JFME, to introduce our next speaker and begin the proceedings.
Thank you, Satyajit. Welcome to all the delegates. आप सबका स्वागत है। आपने देखा कितना बेहतरीन काम AIPSN ने किया है, BGVS ने किया है, कितना कितने कॉन्टैक्ट प्रोग्राम्स कराए हैं, कितने लोग तक पहुँचे हैं, लेकिन टास्क बहुत चैलेंजिंग है, इसको और आगे बढ़ाना है। तो आज एक बहुत अच्छी पहल है कि हम सब एक साथ मिलकर कर रहे हैं। मैं जॉइंट फोरम फॉर मूवमेंट ऑन एजुकेशन को रिप्रेजेंट करती हूँ, जहाँ पे AI फैक्टो जो सारे स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटीज़ एंड कॉलेजेस को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, फेडकुटा जो सारे सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं, इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स, और स्कूल टीचर्स फेडरेशंस हैं, ऑल इंडिया स्कूल टीचर्स फेडरेशन, प्राइमरी टू सेकेंडरी ऑल लेवल्स, many student organizations and also the non-teaching employees of various universities. एक अम्ब्रेला ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। तो हम लोग ये कोशिश करते हैं अपने लेवल पे कि सारे अलग अलग जो सेक्शंस हैं यूनिवर्सिटी कम्युनिटी के, उनको एक साथ लाएं, और स्कूल एजुकेशन पे भी जो काम कर रहे हैं AIFRTE, AISEC और AIPSN, इन साथियों को भी हमने JFME में जोड़ा है, तो हम एक साथ मिलके काम कर रहे हैं। मैं विदाउट एनी फर्दर डिले I will request our inaugural speaker, Comrade Bindu, Honorable Minister for Education from Kerala, to give the inaugural address. Comrade Bindu.
Respected Chairperson, Comrade Nandida, respected dignitaries on and of the dais, dear participants of this assembly and other comrades. First of all, on behalf of the Left and Democratic Government of Kerala, let me extend warm greetings to all the participants of this assembly. As you all know, we have assembled here to discuss the far-reaching consequences of the national education policy and other measures taken in the educational field by the present NDA government at the center. We have assembled here to register our protest against such retrograde measures and to build up resistance and defense against attempts to rob the democratic rights prevailed in the educational sector in India. In order to understand the possible dangers implicit in NEP, at first we have to locate it or contextualize it in the present socio-political situation in India. What are the specificities of contemporary socio-political climate in our country today? We have fallen prey to both political fascism and religious bigotry. The secular fabric of the nation is being torn ruthlessly. There is the systematic distortion of history, systematic distortion of representation of certain sections of society. There is the systematic erasure of the subaltern sections, classes, castes, and gender altogether from what is counted as social and cultural history of India. Those who are relegated to the margins, that is, the minorities, the Dalits, women, and transgenders, are further pushed to the periphery. Through creating an atmosphere of animosity, through politics of hatred or politics of intolerance, and unleashing violent onslaughts on these marginalized sections, the politics of exclusion is getting strengthened. Communal polarization gets intensified through the very acts and approaches of the rulers of India. The central government has proved themselves as anti-minorities, anti-women, anti-Dalits, and anti-people. The process of othering and the erasure of the other has become rampant. Certain sections are othered and alienated through constricted versions of nationalism. I would like to draw your attention to the recent episodes of erasing the reference to Mughal dynasty from the history texts of NCERT. The reference to Darwin and the theory of evolution also seems to be vanished. Years before, two glorious struggles which happened in Kerala disappeared suddenly from CBSE textbooks. One was Malabar Mutiny, led by the Muslims of the northern part of Kerala. Another one was Charnar struggle, the struggle waged by women to cover their breasts. These two glorious struggles fought by subaltern sections of Kerala society disappeared from CBSE textbooks 2 years before. The intellectual centers of nation are being hijacked through clever maneuvering. The key positions of the intellectual centers like JNU are given to the supporters of Hindu fundamentalism. It is in this context that we should go through the proposals of the NEP 2020. The NEP 2020 as an educational document has certain gaps, silences, contradictions, and absences in it. NEP, with its profusely verbal acrobatics, appears to address all the concerns of modern education, but covertly smuggles in the specific agenda of the ruling party through the fissures and gaps in the ideological structure. The document keeps complete silence on the constitutional values like secularism. It never mentions the need for reservations. Reservations for the socially and economically backward sections. In the present Indian context, these silences should be considered as criminal. In the present regressive atmosphere, this can be a silent assent for othering or alienating certain sections. A close and comprehensive scrutiny of the NEP document reveals many such contradictions. In the present socio-political situations where communal forces join hands with global capitalism and corporate forces, we can clearly see this document as a vehicle for communalizing and commercializing education. The document will surely contribute to the intensification of the process of commodification of education. The provisions of the document will surely accelerate the processes of commercialization, communalization, and elitism. NEP 2020 urges to impose centralization, denouncing the principles, federal principles of the country. NEP has not been subjected to any legislative or social scrutiny. It has bypassed the parliamentary procedure. Through a travesty of social audit, it has invited public opinion through UGC, but disregarded all the replies and suggestions. NEP 2020 comes after 34 years of national policy on education of 1986, Rajiv Gandhi's Challenges to Education, a Policy Perspective. An educational policy should scrutinize the impacts, merits, and demerits of the previous policy documents. But NEP never makes an attempt to study the impact of the previous policy documents. Most of the time, it revels in a glorious past of ancient India. What was the situation in that so-called golden period? The society was highly hierarchical, pyramidal, and unjust. The majority was kept in darkness through the denial of education. It was a place where Ekalavyas had to cut their thumb if they pursue studies. It was the age which proclaimed that Shudras and women, if they ventured to study Vedas, molten lead should be poured into their ears. That society with feudal rotten values was full of atrocities perpetrated against the backward and weaker sections. The present NEP, through its enthusiasm to glorify that ancient India, is trying to go back to the pyramidal and highly hierarchical social structure. The elimination of the socially and economically weaker sections from the field of education. The NEP calls for the complete dismantling of affiliating system of colleges. We have seen the closure of thousands of government schools throughout India, especially in North India. And along with this, NEP calls for the complete dismantling of the affiliating system of colleges. The ending of the affiliating system will be highly detrimental for the students from the rural areas, especially the tribal students from the hilly and coastal areas. Regional availability of educational facilities is important in the case of access. Despite the claims of the NEP, it has failed to identify and address the socio-economic challenges faced by India's educational progress. While the cost of quality education continues to rise, particularly with the advent of self-financing educational institutions, an increasing number of students is forced to drop out even before completing a minimum level of education. The NEP involves a paradigm shift in educational system that is highly retrograde. This shift is from a conception of education as a means of nation building to one that prepares students to become mere fodder of neoliberal capitalism. And for this, they are given a dash of cultural chauvinism. The word Indianness is being repeated in the document many times, but the definition of Indianness is too narrow and constricted. The repeated assertions of Indianness paves the way for a very narrow concept of the nation in the present situation. The variety, plurality, richness and diversity of our nation is the wealth of India. But unfortunately, instead of seeing this multiplicity and cultural polyphony as an asset, the NEP dismisses it as fragmentation. Fragmentation is the word used in the document. For the NEP, the cultural diversity of India is a burden of the nation. It's not an asset, but a burden. The removal of the lofty goal of nation building suggested by the NEP will be severely damaging to the nation. After independence, all the policy documents provided suggestions regarding the reconstruction of a nation. The first removal is that of inclusiveness. The field of education will be confined to a socially and economically privileged elite. There is no mention about funding in the field of higher education. Here we can read a strategic retreat from the responsibilities of the government to provide quality education to the weaker sections. UGC has already been reduced to UEC, a mere facilitator for the private self-financing establishment. The national education policy visualizes an education that conforms to the interests of a corporate Hindutva alliance. Nowhere in the document is there any mention of reservation for the Dalits, OBCs or other underprivileged sections. Its total silence on reservations suggests an unwillingness to continue in the socially and economically disadvantaged groups. We have already seen that what the central government have done with the scholarships for the socially and economically backward sections. Serious cuts are there. A further reason for considering NEP to be exclusionary is that it envisages significant privatization of education, which will clearly make it more expensive, which will be well beyond the pockets of the socially and economically deprived. NEP envisages an education system that is full of doors that lead the students out, pointing them the exits. Its major impetus appears to be exclusion rather than inclusion. It's more a policy of exclusion than a policy of education. Students can go out and walk in at different stages, enjoying apparent freedom. This is a camouflage. But in reality, the system relegates the socially disadvantaged groups, the women, the working class, the historically oppressed caste groups, into the ghettos of education. What we see is a kind of ghettoization. You go after 1 year, you go after 2 years. A student will get nothing with 1 year education at the college. Exploiting the need for employment, the education system outs the student into the global job market with bare minimum skills that will ultimately benefit the corporate employer. NEP has major ideological underpinnings. On the one hand, it purports to bring in commercialization of education. Students are commodities, packaged and presented for global consumption by corporates. NEP's insistence on value addition speaks about humans becoming products that can be molded and sold, each new skill adding value to the individual in a competitive market. On the other hand, it uses the thinly veiled commercialism to smuggle the more dangerous communalism in through augmented centralization and the undermining of federal values. A central system will be controlling the content and transaction. A Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog headed by the Prime Minister of India. From Anganwadis to PhD, everything will be prescribed and controlled by a central agency, Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog, RSA. RSA, the word reminds me of Althusser's repressive state apparatus. Those excluded can at best be vocationally trained in some skills, but they would not get a comprehensive education. The vision is that a few, depending on the needs of neoliberal capitalism, will acquire an education that will enable them to fill executive and official positions in the corporate world. The others will be thrown out from the prospects of education with some given skills, that is to serve the global market. And they will join that vast and growing segment of the workforce, among whom the limited number of available jobs are rationed out. Those who receive and are destined for proper jobs will have a curriculum that imitates those of metropolitan universities. This detaches education completely from Indian situation. To camouflage this imitativeness, the NEP suggests imbuing students with what is essentially a Hindutva type of chauvinism. The curriculum is supposed to harp on the glories of ancient India, where horrible practices like untouchability existed. This ascent on breeding conformism among students and teachers permeates this educational document. Neglect of the federalist principles and centralization are encouraged by the NEP. As I told you earlier, from the primary level, pre-primary level, Anganwadis to PhDs, everything will be regulated and supervised by RSA, Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog, a centralized agency headed by the Prime Minister. The NEP terms it as light but tight regulations. That is the words. The aim is to redefine India as a homogeneous, monolithic category, sabotaging its heterogeneous identity. Even the topics of research will be dictated by a centralized agency, that is National Research Foundation. So the topic of research and research problem should be resulted from the inquisitive mind of the researcher. It should not be thrust upon from an external agency. Recently, Banaras Hindu University issued a notice seeking young researchers capable of establishing Manusmriti as an appropriate text for Indian society, for establishing Manusmriti as superior to Indian constitution. Homogenization or unified syllabus will obliterate differences and specificities. Such an approach will dismiss the local and specific cultural nuances of different societies in India. All universities should have the right to continue with their specific organic nature, their own cultural and social specificities. The states should have a say, a space in playing their role in the field of education, as it has a far-reaching effect in the rebuilding of society. The NEP proposes multiple exits in the 4-year degree course. Actually, a student gets no substantial education within 1 year. According to this document, the students will be getting a certificate after 1 year and a diploma after 2 years. This model of multiple exit is dangerous for students belonging to the socially and economically weaker sections because they will be the dropouts. They came to the field of education late and they will be living in such a condition at first. They will be thrown out of the institutions after 1 or 2 years with a certificate or diploma in their hands with no sufficient value. The complete dismantling of the affiliating system will surely end up with the exclusion of the weaker and marginalization sections from the higher education system. By all means, the present NEP is a threat to the federal principles upheld by India since the day of independence for the last 75 years. Over-centralization, elitism and commercialization will be the hallmarks of Indian education if the NEP comes into practice. In Kerala, we are trying to build up an alternative model, that is a people's alternative, a people-centric knowledge society. We have transformed several government schools into world-class institutions with public funding, institutions with physical infrastructure of international standards. We have made tremendous improvement in the academic quality also. For this, we have combined government support with the local and institutional level developmental committees involving PTAs and all, involving all the benefactors of the school, Vidyalaya Vikasana Samitis. At present, we are giving emphasis and priority to the higher education sector by setting new innovation and incubation environment in higher education institutions. We are trying to build a new knowledge society, and for this we are concentrating on the process of knowledge translation, translating theoretical research outcomes into practical application, how to improve the living standards of our people. Research centers, universities and higher education institutions will produce knowledges which will be converted into products and processes which will be useful for larger society outside the campus. Kerala's experiment is to resist NEP with a higher education model that suits the specific needs of the state and its people. Our search for an alternative began with the appointment of 3 commissions: a reform commission with Professor Shyam B. Menon as chairman to suggest a viable alternative system, then an examination reform commission with Professor Aravind Kumar as chairman, and a law reform commission for suggesting reforms in acts and statutes. At the very outset, Kerala intends to build a people-centric knowledge society, and this model of knowledge society is different from the models projected by the developed capitalist society. Our model intends to take engagement with knowledge production and research for the betterment of the larger society, for the betterment of the living standards of Keralites, for broadening the economic base of Kerala. Kerala intends to play up the strength of its education system, which is public funded and therefore universally accessible. Our main focus now is to develop a knowledge economy that centers on producing new knowledge through research. We are establishing autonomous inter-university centers of excellence aimed at state-of-the-art research facility in our universities. We have started a scheme to give 500 postdoctoral fellowships to pursue studies in areas that will help the growth of the state. We have funded new laboratories and research centers in all our universities. We are trying to build up an innovation, incubation, startup ecosystem in our higher education institutions. The new knowledge that research creates will be translated into socially useful products and processes through translational research laboratories. The new ideas will be incubated and the researchers themselves will be encouraged to use them as startup ideas for production in the startup facilities. I am not elaborating on this because time is over according to the chairperson of the session. We are trying our level best to build up a new knowledge society, an inclusive society where secular values and scientific timber will be promoted so as to secure the harmonious coexistence of different sections. There are projects for improving the facilities for girls, transgenders and the differently abled sections. Girls participate more than boys in the higher education sector. 57% of participation of girls. That is a higher percentage of participation in Kerala's higher education institutions. Our approaches are to foster egalitarian attitudes, bringing about equal and better opportunities for women, transgenders, differently abled, the SCs and STs and other backward sections. Our aim is to build up Samabhavanayuda Navakeralam, a new Kerala with a perfect egalitarian perspective. Let us put up joint struggles to defend democratic principles and rights of students and teachers. Kerala is trying to release a charter of rights for students and another charter of rights for teachers in our present context. Let us defend the secular traditions of our nation with utmost commitment and the scope of unity. Obviously, unity colored by rich diversity, plurality and polyphony. With these words, I conclude. I declare this National Assembly on Education as inaugurated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Bindu. I'll request you to just remain in your position while we present two books to you. One is called Education or Exclusion, edited by Nitesh Narayanan, and the other is Alternative Education Policy, which has been put together by the SFI, and Dinesh Denka, who is the editor of Chhatra Sangharsh, will present that to you. So please accept these two publications. Yeah, are they coming? And thank you for such an enlightenment. You've covered almost all the areas which will then be discussed in the different sessions. Really wonderful. And now we will request Professor Sukhdev Thorat, who has been inspiring us for many, many years, and while he was chairperson of the UGC as well. And I think it's an online talk, so we'll wait until this is set up and we are able to hear him.
So can you? Hello. Hello. Yes, sir. We can hear you. Yeah. Can I start now? Yes. Yes. Am I sufficiently audible? Hello. Yes, sir. You are. Yeah. Because I see a echo. Good morning to all of you. I appreciate this initiative undertaken by you on discussion on the new education policy 2020. I would explain my view about the new education policy in another 15 minutes or so. So since we have a limited time, I will only highlight the main points about the new education policy. The first point that I would like to share with you is that this policy has come after the 1986 policy, which was approved by the Parliament. The policy of 1948, 1968, 1986 were based on the comprehensive study of the higher education system. First in 1948 by Radhakrishna Commission and second by Kothari Commission in 1964-65. Both the committees brought out two big volumes after empirically, statistically, and based on the facts, studied the higher education system. They strengthened the strong point, positive point of our system. They removed the limitation and brought new things. But it was based on a very comprehensive study. Now, unlike the 1986 policy or 68 policy, the 2020 policy is not based on the study of the higher education system. It is based on the lot of imitation which is drawn from the USA and Germany or Europe of the best practices which are found in those countries. That's the number one point that you have to remember. And the other best practices of higher education system. So it is not based on the examination of the higher education system. So it has a serious limitation. Secondly, second point that we have to remember is that, as I said, that there is no last commission which examined the policy of higher education and developed a policy in 1986 and program of action in 1992 was in 1964-65. Now, since that time, we have not studied the higher education system. And the higher education system has gone through a drastic change since that time. So it was necessary for the government, before they bring 2020 policy, to study the system. The higher education, when it was at the time of Kothari Commission, there was no private sector, very small private sector. We have public sector higher education institution and the private but aided, which are similar to that of publics, which are regulated by the government. Now, after 1964 or 70s, we have a huge privatization of higher education. As on today, about half of the universities are private. About 60 to 65% of colleges are self-financing and private, and equally the 67% of them standalone institutions are private. Now, we do not know the character of this sector in detail, and the 2020 policy has not studied at all. So there is a limitation now of this policy, which we should keep in mind. Certain good practices from USA and from Europe has been adopted in this committee, and some little experience of Indian higher education system and impose on the already existing system. And therefore, there are problems of implementation and other issues. That is the first point that we have to remember. The government has missed the golden opportunity of studying the higher education system and basing the policies based on empirical study of the higher education system. That is the first point. The second point that I want to make is that this policy aims to change the system, overall changes in the system. It is not touching one part or other part or two parts. It intends to change the entire higher education system in its multiple sphere. And the objective is, as has been stated in the policy, is to bring the improvement in the quality and equal access to the quality. So there are two set of recommendation in this, one for the improvement of quality, another for the equity and inclusion. That is the word that has been used. But there are no substantial suggestion or scheme or policies for equity and inclusion. They are only repetition, and they are recommended to the state university to implement and the individual institution to implement. But there are no central government scheme or policies to bring an equity and inclusion. Very few. Only suggestion of gender fund, suggestion of socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged group, but there is nothing much beyond that. Even the recent committee set up by the UGC only makes suggestion to the state university and the colleges. Now, the second point is about the quality. Most of the suggestions are about the quality improvement. Now, there are 5 of them, 6 of them are very important. One is that they want to replace the existing affiliating system, university affiliating system into a unitary system. Then they have changed the duration of the degrees from 3-year to 4-year undergraduate, and the MA 1 year and 2 year. Similarly, B.Ed is also of 2 year and 4 year. So they have changed the duration and also brought changes in the various stages of education. Third is they have now generally recommended the national test for admission. Fourth is that the curriculum has been suggested to have multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary subject, and in that they have also proposed value education. The last 2 important decisions, recommendation one is that they have retained the private self-financing sector, non-profit financing sector with no changes. We know that the existing private sector provide an unequal access to the poorer classes, but the policy has not made any suggestion for that. They supported the present private self-financing sector. And the last is that they are now invited the foreign university on the campuses. So there is a policy for internationalization of higher education. Now these are 6, 7, 8 important suggestions for quality improvement. Now my general observation is that while these quality suggestions are made, they are sort of ignorant and naive that these all quality suggestions are going to undermine the inclusiveness and the equal access to the poorer and socially and economically disadvantaged classes. And there is no provision against that. So let me take one by one very briefly. If you take the suggestion of converting the affiliating system into a unitary system, the argument is that unitary system is better in terms of quality, in the sense that undergraduate, postgraduate, PhD programs are in the university, undergraduate program also. So all teachers, senior teacher also teach undergraduate. All the universities in USA have a unitary system. Now we have an affiliating system, that we have a university and there are colleges affiliated to the university. Colleges by and large take undergraduate teaching and postgraduate teaching, some colleges PhD, but bulk of teaching at master and PhD level in the university. Now they are suggesting replacement of the affiliating system to the unitary system. Now, switching over to the unitary system will help. Quality-wise, I understand that the best of the teacher will also teach the undergraduate student. There won't be affiliating colleges. All the undergraduate and postgraduate program will be in the unitary university. But there is a one adverse impact, and this committee has not taken into account. That is that the present affiliating system is having a spread of the colleges into different geographical areas. They are located in large villages, small town, medium town, large cities. Now, as a result, affiliating system provides a cheap and less costly access to the poorer. Now, if you have a unitary system, which according to them will be located in district places and big town, they have suggested 360 university at district places. Then increasingly over a period of time, the colleges in the villages and small town will be merged with this district university. And as a result, the access of the poor people, access of people from rural area, girls who goes to the colleges in the large villages, small town will be reduced. Now, what committee should have done is to find out the way out. That is to take the advantage of unitary university and take the advantage of affiliating university. Advantage of unitary university is that it provide access to a better teacher to the students, so quality improves. But affiliating system advantage is that it provides easy and cheap access to the student because geographically the colleges are scattered. Now there is a way out whereby you can retain the present colleges where they are and they can be converted into a unitary university. What you need is the change in the system. No, I have a suggestion, but I won't have time to share with you. But the committee has just borrowed from the Princeton University, another US university. There was a member from the Princeton University who just borrowed the unitary system from Princeton University. So no study of the existing system, that how we can have a middle path whereby we can have advantage of affiliating system as well as the unitary system. That is the first point. Second point is duration. The bachelor degree will be now 3-year duration as well as 4-year duration. And 3-year duration, if you have a bachelor degree, you will have 2-year master. If you have 4-year bachelor, you have 1-year master. Then you have integrated system also for MBA. Now, we do not know the reason. Why is it that you have changed the period from 3 to 4 years? There is no justification in the report at all. Why should there be a 4-year BA? The Kothari Commission studied the entire system and found that the 3-year bachelor is appropriate. And then there is a 11th and 12th, higher secondary and secondary. There is no reason given in the report and there is no justification. My only justification seems to me is that in the very first report, they have mentioned, now they have taken out that all the elite student which goes to USA, there they require the graduate of 4-year duration. Now, since they have a graduate of 3-year duration, they have to do 1-year course, and then they can be admitted into 1 year in the first year of master program. So it is only to benefit the student who goes to USA that they have introduced this 4-year system. Otherwise, there is no reason. Now, these are disadvantages for this. A poor student or a student who cannot afford higher education, now will have to spend 1 more year to get a bachelor degree of 4-year duration. Access will be reduced. Now, what will happen is that the economically better of student will do a 4-year degree, and economically disadvantaged will do a 3-year degree. When they enter into the market will prefer the 4-year bachelor. So the poor and socially disadvantaged who have a 3-year bachelor will suffer in employment. So why do you create this disparity? There is no reason why this double duration bachelor degree should be there. You are creating a caste system, a hierarchy as a matter of fact. So both it will reduce access as well as it will affect the employability of the weaker section. Multiple entry, multiple exit seems to me some sort of a better practice, because at the moment a student get drop out after 2 years, his basic degree remain higher secondary. But if you give him a diploma that he has done 2-year BA, so his qualification is improved. So multiple entry, multiple exit is okay, but this duration, I do not favor this duration. We should go back to 3 years. If the state can have a power, Kerala state can have a power, they should only opt for a 3-year duration. Same is the story about the B.Ed. B.Ed has also been, duration has been increased. The third point is the national test. Now, we have a national test for engineering, medical, and some of the institute. But why are we recommending national test for the state university and colleges? This way I don't understand. For central university, they have already implemented the central examination, common examination for 47 university. And I'm told that it has ran into trouble. This will have a very devastating effect. It will affect the quality. It is already affecting the quality in JNU. They have outsourced this admission to a private agency. There are objective questions. And objective questions are then marks are added and ranking is met and students are admitted. Is this the way that you admit the student for MPhil and PhD? JNU has been outstanding university simply because they conduct their own tests. They have an interview. Even for MA, they have interview. They have MPhil, they have interview. So they know what student they are taking. No, this All India test, American model again. So, but again, to suggesting to the state and colleges to have an test, All India test, even for the social science courses, is a very, very bad system. We have an enrollment rate 25%, 26% at All India level. Some of the state have much lower than that. At this state, you will put the restriction on the admission. At the moment, a student goes to the university, student goes to the colleges with his mark sheet, and if his marks are reasonably well, the college think that it is proper, they give an admission. Now, by test you are making is more complicated. And there is a sufficient evidence from Tamil Nadu that whenever you have a test, it is the poor, rural area, girls who suffer. Because relatively rich can go for a coaching, and through coaching they can improve their performance artificially and mechanically. They may not be necessarily very good student. In fact, Tamil Nadu report pointed out that those who have got higher mark in the higher secondary, they did not get admission, bulk of them. But those who have lower, but through coaching they have cleared the All India test, they got the admission. So national test is biased toward the poor. And therefore, I am not in favor of this. This has to be, if Kerala state has a choice, they should not opt for this national test. You have for engineering, you have for medical, there are those considerations. But for the entire state university system, you don't require this. This is the third point. Fourth point is private universities. Now, you know that if you look at the access to the poor to the self-financing institution in your own state of Kerala, because you have a larger proportion of self-financing institution. I don't know why, but there is it. And if you take the access according to the income level, the poorer have a less access to self-financing institute. They land up into public education institutions. So it is bias. So you have to, the committee should have suggested some improvement, some method whereby a poor also can be admitted into the self-financing institute with financial assistance. I remember I have gone to Canada when I was chairman of the UGC, and they make a presentation to me. They have an Education Finance Commission, corporation. They give loan to everybody. And the loan is then repaid after a person get a job. There is a default. I asked them, there is a default. They say, yes, there is a 4 or 5% default, but that we consider as a subsidy. So there is a system that they have developed. What is our system? Take loan from bank. Bank have a normal commercial conditions, security and other thing. The poor cannot take a loan. So I think they have not given a thought. They have not studied the self-financing institution and what is the admission, access to the poor and disorder, that advantage group. They have developed this fancy concept of socially and economically disadvantaged group, and he had all categories into it, undermining the special problem of the tribal and special problem of the scheduled caste. The fancy word has been the characteristics of this report. A lot more. If you read the report, it is sort of a literary piece. It doesn't have rigorous academic things. This is the one point. Then you come to foreign universities. This debate was there in foreign university when I was also chairman, whether we should have a foreign university campuses or whether we should have a internationalized of education through collaboration. I always preferred that we should have internationalization through collaboration. We can have a collaboration with outside university, and say Kerala University have a collaboration. They can have a joint degree, dual degree, A teacher can go, student can go, carry forward their credit. It has the advantage that you get everything from the best of the university in USA, but your capability is increased. Even if collaboration is gone, you got syllabus, you got pedagogy, method of teaching, you have everything. But in a campus situation, the campus will operate independently. The rules regulation brought out by UGC is that they will recruit their own teacher, they will have their own admission policy, they will charge the fee that they want. So it will certainly affect the access. A poor even cannot get access to the private sector. How can they get access to the foreign university? In fact, private sector, self-financing sector is now complaining that they are not being given same facilities, or there will be a competition. So these are the aspects that which will reduce the access to the poor and socially disadvantaged. And I'm not quite sure whether quality will improve. If there is improvement in the quality, that will be a improvement in the quality for a particular elite section, which has been having quality education already, but not for the masses. In fact, it seems to me that the new education policy measure, which are for quality improvement, will put a check on massification of the education. And the higher education will be confined to a particular section of the society. And they have very diplomatically said that, okay, we should emphasize more skill education. Let these people go to skill education, but not as much to the higher education. So there is a strategy behind that. Now, the last point I'll make a mention is the introduction to multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary courses. That's fine. I think you should have choice to the student to opt for the courses, additional courses. But the multidisciplinary courses across the disciplines should not be imposed. It should be made optional. If you make science compulsory for those who are doing graduate in the social sciences, then there will be a problem, dropout. You make these other courses, interdisciplinary courses, a optional course for this. Now, the last point I'll make, and I'll stop here, that in the course content, the government has also talked about value education. And now the steps are being taken. There is a report on value education also. Now, value education means that the language is very diplomatic. You know, the citizenship rights should be taught, constitution should be taught, but right behavior, appropriate behavior also should be developed through value education. That is okay. Goals are fine. But what are the instruments? Although it is not clearly mentioned, but there is a clear indication that the values will be drawn from a particular religion. There is an indirect mention of Gita. There is an indirect mention of Vedic literature. The Karma Siddhanta of Gita is directly mentioned. Then the stories from Jana Upadesh and Jatak Katha will be taught. Now, recently, you know that what NCERT has done. It has taken out the Darwin theory, but it brought the Gita's theory. The Gita which support the Varna system will be taught to the student. So, you know, although on the face of it, it is mentioned that we give right value, the intention is to, in my view, is to Brahmanize the value education, and that you should be far more careful. And it has been happening openly. I'm not saying something which is new, but the disturbing and inconvenient portion are being taken out from the courses. Friends, these are some of the observations that I have, and these are very disturbing trend that the new education policy has brought in. There was an opportunity for the government to undertake the study of the entire higher education system, strengthen the best point of our system, and overcome the limitation and make it more quality oriented, but at the same time with equal access to the poor. If you have your enrollment ratio, which is only 26%, which is much lower than China or European countries where the enrollment ratio is 50%, 80%. At that stage, you know, the equal access and easy access to higher education is important. But I think the attention has not been given to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you so much, Professor Thorat. Thank you. Thank you very much for the enlightening talk. Yes, yes.
Okay.
And now I'll hand it over to Mayuk. So Mayuk Biswas is now going to take over chairing of the remaining parts.
Okay, thank you.
So on behalf of Student Federation of India, I'd like to thank IPSN and BGVS for organizing this National Education Assembly. As you know, that in this period of time, as Comrade Bindu was mentioning, the students who are coming from the marginalized sections, they're suffering most in this period of time. And even yesterday, I got a call from Kharagpur IIT. It's about a suicide case of a student. And if you see the statistics, from 2014 to 2021, 122 students died by suicide. And among them, 24 are from SC community, 3 from ST, and 41 from OBC community. And these are right now statistics only. And this government, without any consent of students, teachers, those who are the main stakeholders in this education sector, they are trying to impose this national education policy. But we are saying, this is not national education policy. This is national exclusion policy. It's all about exclusion. And that is why, still now, we are giving slogan, Ek labbo hum sharminda hai, tere qatil zinda hai. Now, this is the time. We have to take this fight from this auditorium to the streets. This is a call of the hour in this situation. And we also believe, we are thanked to all the organization who came here, because we believe this is not a duty of single organization. We have to fight unitedly. And there is this song and popular Hindi film, Tere jeet mere jeet, तेरी हार मेरी हार सुन ले मेरे यार. और यहाँ पर हारने का कोई और मौका नहीं है, हम लोगों को जीतना पड़ेगा और इकट्ठा होके ये लड़ाई जीतना पड़ेगा. और इसके लिए फिर मैं इनवाइट करना चाहता हूँ, आई लाइक टू इनवाइट एमिनेंट academician Professor Anita Rampal, former Dean, School of Education, Delhi University.
थैंक यू. साथियों, हम लोग अभी बात कर रहे हैं और बहुत ही पुख्ता रूप से ये सामने आया है कि ये पॉलिसी क्या क्या कह ढा रही है. कल ही बहुत ही दिल दहलाने वाली खबर आई है कि जब बोर्ड एग्ज़ाम्स के रिज़ल्ट आते हैं तो आंध्र प्रदेश के बोर्ड एग्ज़ाम्स के रिज़ल्ट के आते ही कुछ ही घंटों में कई बच्चों ने सुसाइड किया है क्योंकि फेल हुए हैं एक सब्जेक्ट में, कुछ सब्जेक्ट्स में. तो जिस तरह की निराशा समा जाती है बच्चों में एक इम्तिहान को लेकर, उसके बाद होता क्या है कि तुरंत जो साइकोलॉजिस्ट हैं, काउंसलर्स हैं, दे ऑल टेल चिल्ड्रन हु अटेम्प्टेड और एक्चुअली कमिटेड सुसाइड yesterday that there is a long life. You have a long life to convert your failure into success. Don't take a step now. No one questions. I mean, the top leaders of our country, the top leader of our country talks about exam warriors. एग्जाम एक वॉर है और एग्जाम लेने वाले छात्र वॉरियर्स हैं और सारी जिम्मेदारी उन पे डाली जाती है. It's your responsibility, it's your agency, and you have to fight. So this policy now is completely leaving it to our children, leaving it to whatever possibilities they might have. They're just giving up hope. And the same Andhra Pradesh government, जिसके जब हम आंकड़े देखते हैं तो there are some districts where only less than half the children have passed. Kudappa district, Vizianagaram district, मुश्किल से 46% have passed class 11, which is called the first year. Class 12, मुश्किल से 50%, 60%. What is happening? And you know what our policy says? दुनिया में कोई ऐसी policy नहीं है जो लिखती है कि exams will be made easier. I've never heard of any policy in the world saying that. We talk of more relevant assessment, we talk of authentic assessment in which it is not rote-based, but we've never heard exams will be made easier. This is what our policy says. And it says so that all children who attend class will pass. तो ये एक तरह का मजाक हम खेल रहे हैं अपने छात्रों के साथ, क्योंकि अब दो वर्ग हमारे सामने हैं. एक वो छात्र जो कट ऑफ्स और 99% और 100% और इस सब का सपना देख रहे हैं और इसके पीछे पूरी उनकी माथापच्ची जो हो रही है पूरे परिवार की. एंड द अदर इज विच इज जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट पासिंग. And that is shocking because the nature of the exams, I was recently talking to some students who from the Delhi government schools took the class 12 board exam. I was shocked to see the kinds of questions they have to answer in class 12. Last year I had written about political science. This year I was looking at what is called an interdisciplinary subject. ये शब्द जो है ना बहुत हमारी पॉलिसी में आ रहे हैं. तो एक इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी सब्जेक्ट है जिसको फैमिली स्टडीज एंड फैमिली एंड कम्युनिटी स्टडीज कहते हैं. होम साइंस का नया नाम है. द काइंड्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस इन दैट एंड दैट बुक एंड दैट कोर्स हैज बीन रिवाइज्ड इन 2016 इन एनसीईआरटी. द काइंड्स ऑफ क्वेश्चंस इन दैट वर जस्ट एब्सोल्युटली astounding. How can anyone think of asking a class 12 student just completely meaningless questions? And then you tell them that, you know, you are now ready for going into the world of experience and practice. And the student told me that they have something called a home science lab. They never entered that the whole year. The exam gives 30 marks for practicals, and that's where children get marks. So those 30 marks, they were told you bring something from your house, some batik that you made, something that you cooked, you bring from your house. This was the final board exam. And before the external examiner came, the teacher said, अपनी किताब से यहाँ copy कर लो. So they copied something from their textbook for the final exam. There are 30 marks for this. So the passing and the dhakka lagao, ek aur dhakka lagao, comes from these teachers, well-meaning teachers will pass them. Now this is happening in Delhi government schools. Our best students from the Faculty of Education teach there. Last week our students were telling our teachers, the experienced teachers, 15 साल से दिल्ली सरकार के स्कूलों में पढ़ा रहे हैं और ये दिल्ली सरकार कहती है कि शिक्षा की क्रांति कर दी है. क्रांति से कम वो कोई शब्द नहीं इस्तेमाल करते. और उस क्रांति में क्या किया है कि at every stage, I mean, these teachers are saying that class 7, class 8, whenever they give marks, उन पे pressure होता है. पहले स्कूल का, प्रिंसिपल का, फिर डायरेक्टरेट का, increase the marks, and that is happening. So on the one hand is this subaltern, the large mass जो इस तरह से पास हो रहा है, जिसको कोई मतलब नहीं. वहाँ एक सवाल क्वेश्चन था कि what are the principles जिस पे वॉशिंग मशीन काम करती है और उसका फर्स्ट ऑप्शनल आंसर है रिसर्च स्कॉलर. Research scholar is an optional answer. I mean, ऐसे अटपटे, and then there is something called pulsation and then something tumbling or something. तो कुछ रट लो जो एग्जाम भी बना रहा है. and हमारे कई साथी from the universities in Delhi go to National Testing Agency and they are making questions and they are telling us nightmarish stories. किस तरह से नेशनल लेवल पे CUET का एग्जाम बनता है या टेट का एग्जाम बनता है, नेट का एग्जाम बनता है. They say that it's like it's really like a dystopian place. कोई किसी से बात नहीं कर सकता. आपके फोन्स बाहर रखने हैं. You are watched there. CCTVs are watching you. And in that you have to make exams in a subject which may not be yours. आपका सब्जेक्ट है, कोई बात नहीं, एग्जाम बनाओ. आपको भाषा नहीं आती, कोई बात नहीं, गूगल ट्रांसलेटर यूज करो. सो गूगल ट्रांसलेटर इज मेकिंग क्वेश्चंस इन डिफरेंट लैंग्वेजेस. व्हाट इज हैपनिंग? एंड कांट वी इवन रेज दिस, बिकॉज दिस इज देन डिसाइडिंग वेदर चिल्ड्रन लिव और दे डाई, दे टेक देयर ओन लाइव्स. व्हाट इज हैपनिंग? सो द सेम आंध्र प्रदेश गवर्नमेंट लास्ट ईयर went to the World Economic Forum. इंडिया में नहीं, वो डेवॉस में गए. क्या करने गए? बाइजूस के साथ MOU साइन किया. और बाईजूस को कहा कि आप हमारा 8th to 12th का करिकुलम आप बनाइए, माई बाप हैं आप, प्लीज मेक आवर करिकुलम एंड इम्प्रूव द क्वालिटी ऑफ एजुकेशन. So Byju's is now making the curriculum for this state, and they said they said that a tablet will be given for every child from class 8, and we have kept 500 crores for this. Now this is actually a more recent phenomenon. हम तो मर गए कह के 6% एजुकेशन को मिलना चाहिए, कितना हम लोगों ने शोर मचाया है, अब उसका कुछ मतलब नहीं है. Public funds, huge amounts are going to service providers. Huge amounts. दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट ने 1 करोड़ अनाउंस करके छाती पीट कर 1 करोड़ दिया for the affiliation of 20 schools to the most expensive board, International Baccalaureate, IB, जो प्राइवेट में भी सबसे महंगे हैं. उसके लिए अपने 20 स्कूलों को अफिलिएट कराया. कैसे कर सकते हैं? पब्लिक फंड को एक प्राइवेट बोर्ड के साथ अफिलिएशन के लिए आपने दे दिया, कोई सवाल नहीं उठे. उसको बुलाया देशभक्ति बजट, जिसमें से ये पैसा गया उसको देशभक्ति बजट बुलाया था. So what is happening? Why are questions not being asked कि पब्लिक फंड्स कहाँ जा रहे हैं? महाराष्ट्र गवर्नमेंट went again same way to Davos, वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम, स्विट्जरलैंड के पास जाके बायजूस से साइन किया कि हमारा करिकुलम मॉडर्नाइज कीजिए. अब ये सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स, ये कंटेंट क्रिएटर्स अब नाम आ रहा है, और अब कई सर्कुलर्स निकल रहे हैं मिनिस्ट्री से, यूजीसी से, कि कौन कौन लोग आपके कंटेंट बनाएंगे. सो दिस इज द काइंड ऑफ फास्ट दैट इज बीइंग प्लेड ऑन दिस सिस्टम. एंड so this, in fact, we were talking that there is no record. What is happening now is that the latest global education monitoring report that says it's on non-state actors. So एक नया शब्द है जिसमें सब है. These huge corporations, these huge funding agencies, and you and me. हम भी तो स्टेट के साथ काम करते रहे, पूरे अपनी जिंदगी स्टेट के साथ काम किया है, curriculum बनाए हैं, टेक्स्ट बुक्स बनाए. So we are equated with these huge corporations, and they say that they name Pratham and Central Square Foundation कि ये लोग बहुत लीडिंग नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स हैं जिन्होंने सेंट्रल स्क्वायर फाउंडेशन ने एनवायरनमेंट एनेबलिंग एनवायरनमेंट के लिए काम किया है ताकि प्राइवेटाइजेशन हो सके. And Pratham works like a citizen-led assessment program. So I mean, these are now, it is not small. It's not just सिर्फ देश तक हमारा ये देश बचाओ जो है, अब ये अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर बहुत सारे ऐसे जालों में फंसा हुआ है जो हो रहा है. और वहाँ पर इंडिया को क्या लिखा है उस रिपोर्ट में? India has become a laboratory for outcome or results based financing. तो ये देखिए, अब जो लर्निंग आउटकम्स हम बार बार सुन रहे हैं कि क्या है, और बच्चों को पास कर दो ये सब, क्योंकि इंडिया लेबोरेटरी बन गई है दुनिया की, कि अब ये जो फाइनेंसिंग है ये रिजल्ट बेस्ड होगी, आउटकम बेस्ड होगी, और इसमें बहुत पैसा है. उसके नाम भी लिए जाते हैं कि ये नॉवेल्टी है, द नॉवेल्टी ऑफ द फंडिंग मैकेनिज्म. क्यों? क्योंकि जैसे वेंचर कैपिटलिस्ट होते हैं वो दाव पे लगाते हैं, उसी तरह से यहाँ पर हो रहा है कि पीपल शुड कम, पैसा दें, और फिर वो दाव पे लग रहा है कि रिजल्ट आ रहा है कि नहीं आ रहा है. एंड so they say novelty of the funding mechanism and the risks involved led to the choice of providers with a track record. तो उसमें कैवल्य फाउंडेशन, ज्ञानशाला, जो बिल्कुल लो कॉस्ट प्राइवेट स्कूल चलाती है ज्ञानशाला, वो अब दुनिया की मॉडल है. प्रथम एजुकेशन इनिशिएटिव. तो ये हम जानते हैं कि ये जो एक पूरा ऐसा गुट है जो कि प्राइवेटाइजेशन के लिए भी दबाव दे रहा है, और जिसके बूते पर ये सारी हमारी पॉलिसीज बन रही हैं, जो कह रही है, पॉलिसी कह रही है देयर विल बी नो फोकस ऑन इनपुट्स. कभी हमने दुनिया में ऐसी पॉलिसी नहीं सुनी है. There will be no focus on inputs, only on learning outcomes, and इसलिए philanthropic, public-spirited partners should all come in. सब आके स्कूल कॉलेज खोलिए, क्योंकि हम inputs पे जोर नहीं देंगे. You please come and we will only look for the outcomes. So this is being said, and also these now they are called Quality Education India Development Impact Bonds, Social Finance India Impact Financing Platform. टाटा ट्रस्ट ने ग्लोबल स्टीयरिंग ग्रुप के साथ मिलकर $2 बिलियन कम पैसा नहीं है, इतना पैसा ये दे रहे हैं इस चीज के इस तरह का एक वेंचर capitalism के लिए, that these are like these small venture industries, and but what happens is कि state government का थोड़ा भी 1.5-2% भी अगर हिस्सा इन चीजों से आता है, ये पॉलिसी को बहुत लीवरेज करते हैं, ये इतना लीवरेज करते हैं, और ये इंडिया को इस रिपोर्ट में कहा गया है कि इट्स द फर्स्ट कंट्री जिसने कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को मैंडेटरी किया है कि कंपनियां जब जितना पैसा बनाती हैं उसका एक हिस्सा वो एजुकेशन, हेल्थ वगैरह सोशल सेक्टर में लगाए. एजुकेशन में बहुत लग रहा है, पर इसमें से वो ये भी कहते हैं कि जितनी कंपनियां ये कर रही हैं उसमें से 1/4 25% हैव देयर ओन फाउंडेशंस. तो वो अपने फाउंडेशंस हैं. तो अभी मैं राजस्थान गई थी, उन्होंने बुलाया था कि हम करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क पे काम कर रहे हैं. आई वाज शॉक्ड. There was, you name it, स्टरलाइट फाउंडेशन. आपने स्टरलाइट का नाम माइनिंग से, खदान से सुना होगा, एजुकेशन में कभी नहीं सुना है. They were there for the curriculum. So Cavalier Foundation, Central Square Foundation, Azim Premji, this is what is happening. This is the terrain now within which policy implementation is happening. And I would like to say that ये जो national curriculum framework आ रहा है, ये और भी घातक है. Because what it is doing is, अभी आप देख रहे हैं ये 6 कोर्सेज 5 कोर्सेज बच्चों को पास करना होता है, और किस तरह का ये कहर उन पे ढाया जाता है पास करना सिर्फ. नाउ देयर 16 कोर्सेज, कंपल्सरी कोर्सेज एट क्लास 10, 9 and 10, and 16 चॉइस बेस्ड कोर्सेज. बहुत खतरनाक शब्द होता है ये चॉइस बेस्ड कोर्सेज एट 11-12. तो 16 कोर्सेज में पूरी तरह से इतना उसको डाइल्यूट कर दिया है सब कुछ. बिकॉज जो आप थोड़ा बहुत अगर सीखते भी थे कहीं किसी विषय का, आप उसका अब इतना छोटा हिस्सा सीखेंगे 10वीं 11वीं में, तो आगे की पढ़ाई आपके लिए अब जरूरी नहीं है. और उसमें से जो सबसे खतरनाक ग्रे एरिया है उसको इंटरडिसिप्लिनरी एरिया कहा गया है, क्योंकि सारा तमाम इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम्स, इंडियन ट्रेडिशंस, प्रैक्टिसेस, विद्या, कला, ये सब उसमें आ रहे हैं. And that is a compulsory component. But फिर जो और problematic है कि this policy says कि we know that all schools will not be able to give so many choices 11th 12th में. कहाँ teachers हैं उनके पास, कहाँ ये करेंगे? तो कम से कम एक curricular area, वो 3 categories उन्होंने दी हैं, इसमें से ले लें. So you can have now multiple schools which will teach one language, one interdisciplinary course as the curricular course, and 1 games or yoga. इसके बल पे 12वीं पास करो. And you can have all lot of low-cost private schools or religious schools or schools which teach all these Indian knowledge systems and a lot of pseudoscience. मैं आखिरी एक एग्जाम्पल, आई नो पर्ची आई है, शायद 1 मिनट और है. डिलीशंस और डिस्टॉर्शंस की हमने बात की है कि क्या मजाक चल रहा है, किस तरह से हिस्ट्री, और चुन चुन के सबसे ज्यादा जो डिलीट हुआ है वो शब्द है डेमोक्रेसी. जहां भी डेमोक्रेसी देखा उसको हटाया. तो खुद समझ जाएंगे, समझने वाले समझ गए हैं. और एक और देखिए, एक कहानी है जो इंग्लिश में है ग्रेड 11 में, और ये कहानी है आइंस्टाइन एट स्कूल. अब आप समझ जाएंगे इसको क्यों हटाया. बाकी कोई चीज नहीं हटाई, ये पूरा चैप्टर हटाया, क्योंकि ये कहता है कि आइंस्टाइन had said when he was in school, his history teacher asked him about some date of some Prussian war or something. He says, I don't remember. He said, I told you, why don't you remember? There's no point remembering. So the teacher was quite shocked and said, you mean, what is your system? He says, no, learning facts or dates is not education. And he said, and this is in school. And he says, his cousin says, even stupid people are memorizing something and passing exams. तुम रट लो कुछ, don't take the stand कि नहीं मुझे याद नहीं होता है, तुम याद कर सकते हो. He says, I don't think I'll ever pass the exams. हम उन एग्जाम्स की बात कर रहे थे. आइंस्टाइन स्कूल का बच्चा, स्कूल का छात्र है, वो ये कह रहा है. देन ही सेज ही गोज टू अ फ्रेंड एंड एक फ्रेंडली डॉक्टर से वो एक फर्जी सर्टिफिकेट लेता है कि उसको नर्वस ब्रेकडाउन हो गया है, इसलिए उसको 6 महीने की छूट मिले स्कूल से, बिकॉज ही सेज आई कांट स्टैंड दिस स्कूल. एंड सो ही गोज विद द सर्टिफिकेट, बट द प्रिंसिपल, द हेड टीचर सेज कि नहीं, तुमको एक्सपेल कर दिया, क्योंकि तुम्हारे होते कोई किसी को तुम पढ़ने नहीं देते हो, तुम ऐसे सवाल पूछते हो और ऐसे कहते हो कि ये याद नहीं होगा, वो नहीं याद होगा, तो तुम्हें एक्सपेल कर दिया. बट हिज मैथ्स टीचर गेव हिम इन राइटिंग कि ये इतना मैथमेटिक्स जानता है कि ये मुझे सिखा सकता है, इसलिए उसके बेसिस पे उसको हायर एजुकेशन में सीधा ले लिया जाए. Let him not waste his time. But I'm just saying, why was this removed? Why was this the only story that was removed? क्योंकि इसके बाद एक सवाल होता है, the school system often curbs individual talents. Discuss. तो ये बहुत स्पष्ट है कि ये चीजें डिस्कस भी नहीं की जाए. आइंस्टाइन ने क्या विज्ञान किया वो तो दूर की बात है, मगर ये कि हमें रटना भी चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए, और एग्जाम्स किस तरह से हवा बन गए हमारे लिए, वो कैसे हम पार करते हैं, उस पर भी नहीं चर्चा करो. थैंक यू.
Thanks a lot, Professor Anita Rampal ji. Now I like to invite Dr. N. Varghese, former Vice Chancellor, Nat University of Ed Planning and Admin.
Thank you very much for giving an opportunity to interact with all of you. Can you hear me now? Thank you very much for inviting me. I think there are 3 very important and eloquent speakers before me. So they have touched upon most of the things. There is very little left for me to discuss about the new education policy. Let me start by saying that there are 2 ways in which you can look at the new education policy. One at the level of understanding of the policy, the second at the level of the implementation of the policy in reality, in the schools, in the classrooms, through the textbooks, through curriculum, etc. Let me say that we had 1968 policy and 86 policy. The basic difference between 1986 earlier policies and this policy is that this policy places education, both the school and higher education, in a marketplace. And it is treating education as a commodity, especially higher education, more so than the school education. And it's a corporate engagement that you find. This has a lot of implications for the way education is seen, the way the policies and the strategies for educational expansion are seen. I'll come with a name in it. The second dimension is that indirectly there is a process by which the existing public institutions are devalued. Or in other words, don't rely on the public institutions, rely on the NGOs, rely on the non-government institutions, because in the public institutions very often will not give you the result that you prefer to have through research and others. Whereas the small institutions, through funding, you can write the conclusion first, then you can fund it, then you can do the research, There is a reverse flow of research process that is taking place, and that becomes the basis for taking decisions. Why I'm making this point is that 1968 policy had a very important document, Kothari Commission report as the basis for that, very empirically validated one. 1986 policy had challenges of education, which was also very empirically, thoroughly reviewed and discussed document. This policy has 33 small pieces of documents that were spread on the website for comments, etc. So it has a different way and different process of making. The reliance on empirical evidence is very different from the reliance on empirical evidence that other policies had. Since I don't have time, I'm given 15 minutes, let me take 2 or 3 dimensions of this policy and how it is affecting the inclusion nature of educational education development, and how education can be inclusive. Let me take one example. is that institutional consolidation is something that this policy talks about very systematically about it. Now, what does this mean in terms of institutional consolidation at the school level, and what does it mean in terms of institutional consolidation at a higher education level, and how it becomes exclusionary in nature? For example, if you consider today, out of the 1.5 million schools in this country, I think more than 1 lakh schools have less than 30 students as enrollment. Now, if when you talk about consolidation of the institutions or institutional arrangements, we go against the policy that was existing, whereby we try to open the schools in the small villages, whereby larger number of people from the poor and rural areas and economically deprived sections will be coming to the school. This goes against this policy of institutional consolidation, goes against this prescribed principle of addressing the issues of inclusive development, equitable development, addressing the issues of disadvantaged, That's a major concern. This is an area of concern where we have to unitedly fight against the issues of this type of institutional consolidation that is coming up. Now, if you take higher education, what does institutional consolidation mean? It says that an institution of higher education should have 3,000 students. That's the minimum strength that is expected. And if you see empirically analyze it by the Government of India data, that is Aisha data, you will find that only 4% of the colleges and institutions in this country today have more than 3,000 students. Another 4% is between 2,000 to 3,000, which means that 92% of the institutions and enrollment in those institutions do not constitute this, will not be part of this institutional consolidation. Secondly, there are issues related to the way in which these institutions were established. Many of the institutions in colleges are less than 200 students, less than 500 students. I don't think that it is because there is no demand in these places, but it is because we have gone to the rural areas and we have gone to the deprived regions. We have gone to the disadvantaged groups to start and promote and encourage them to come to the colleges and the schools, This is something. So my first point is that this policy of institutional restructuring and this policy of institutional consolidation goes against the equity notions, goes against the inclusive nature. That is the point where we have to very categorically and systematically and empirically based attack that is to be done on the policy and the way it can be done. The second dimension, one of the qualities of education in India is that the biggest challenge education faces is that schooling without learning. I think in the 1960s and 80s, we were talking about bringing children to the school. The assumption was that if children come to the school, the teachers will be coming to the school, there will be learning taking place and the children will be learning. Our study in 1992, other studies in 2004, NAS studies in 2013 onwards, and the first studies, Nayalada Shukla study in 1973-74, all these studies show one thing very clearly, that students do not learn what they are supposed to learn. Today, the variations and distances are not between those who are outside the school and those who are inside the school. The differences are more between those who are inside the schools, those students who are studying well and those students who are not in a studying well. It is a different thing that we can put the blame to the students if you do not want to look at the system and what is perpetuating this no learning in the schools, So that is very important. So say for example, if you consider the schools, if you take Delhi, Delhi has around 69,000 teachers, should be the teacher positions. Out of that, 25,000 teacher positions are lying vacant. And 14,000 out of that are filled by temporary teachers, ad hoc teachers, etc. And if you take higher education system, more than 43% of the teachers teaching positions in the state universities and 39% in the central universities are lying vacant. So now what is happening is that we are talking about a system that is expanding, but we are not in a position to provide the infrastructure facilities, at least the teachers, Previously we used to have a system whereby the teacher is given, even when facilities are not provided. It meant that opening a school meant that having a building and at least 1 or 2 teachers. Now even that is disappearing. And there are universities and colleges in many parts of the country where we have visited. We find that there is a provision that the course in charge should be a permanent teacher. Doctoral students should be supervised by a permanent teacher. But in some of the universities in the department, there is only one teacher who is permanent. All others are temporary and ad hoc. So this teacher is in charge of 13, 14 or 15 courses, you find it. So there is a process by which you find that these types of arrangements that are created and how we try to improve quality is a bigger question. So for me, today, since majority of the students with a gross enrollment ratio of nearly 100, since majority of the students are inside, we should also focus on what they learn and how they learn and how the learning can be inclusive rather than, and to avoid a situation of schooling without learning, how will we try to do that? A third dimension which was touched upon is that we have to realize one thing. When I talked about corporatization, when I talked about commercialization, or when I talk about marketization of the education which is inherent in this policy, if you see that at the school level, nearly 20% of the schools are unaided. But if you consider that the share of unaided schools in the secondary and higher secondary level, it becomes 60%. And if you consider the private share in the higher education, it becomes 78%. Why I am making this point is that, firstly, the government is not in a position to increase the expenditure, state expenditure or the government expenditure to 6% of the GDP. We started talking this about 1968 policy, 1986 policy, and also in this policy also. That is something which is not changed in terms of the policy in 68, 86 and 2028 policy. So what we find is that, and we are reaching a stage whereby whatever the policy says, the public expenditure in education may not improve substantially in the near future. So the question is that, how do we target? I'm taking a defeatist position, a second level position, not the first position. While we have to continue our struggles to pressurize the government to increase the funding, we should also equally pressurize the government to see that better targeting is done, so that the problems that Professor Anita Rampal talked about, the allocation or misallocation of the resources will not be taking place, So it is very important. And what is important is that if you look into the privatization process that is taking place, both in the school education and higher education institutions, it is also linked to the urbanization process that has taken place in India. So for example, if you take the higher education institutions, how it is spread. For 1 lakh population, if you see to Pondicherry, if you go to Telangana, Tamil Nadu, or if you go to Andhra Pradesh, you will find that there are 55 to 56 institutions per 100 population or 1 lakh population. But if you go to Bihar, or if you go to Bengal, if you go to any of these places, you find that it is only 13 or 14. Or in other words, what I mean to say is that marketization process has accentuated regional inequalities in education. That is a dimension of marketization process, because the middle class that is getting emerged is in some of the states which are economically prosperous. You find that these are the places which are adopting market-friendly reforms, and as a result of that, the markets are promoted. When markets are promoted in certain regions and not promoted in other regions, it leads to higher levels of inequalities, especially the regional inequalities. So for example, the new policy talks about universalization of higher education by the year 2035. And if you consider that Tamil Nadu has already universalized higher education because it has around 52%, 53%. Kerala has already done close to that, it's around 42%. But when you go to places like Bihar, when you go to places like Orissa, Uttar Pradesh and other places, we find that gross enrollment is rather low. So we have to see that where do you want to intervene? And these are also the places where you find that more state intervention is needed. So there is a need to see that with policy or without policy, there is a need to develop the strategies, evolve the strategies, discuss the strategies whereby the limited state funding first is targeted properly. The other issue, I'm not saying that this is to be substituted with the idea of not asking for more funds. But our experience in the last 50 years is that we cried, we fought, and many organizations and institutions fought for it without much success. So I'm not saying that we should develop a pessimism towards that, but one has to change our strategy also in forcing the government to target the system. Another element which is not highlighted adequately is the question of internationalization. So what is important is that we are producing, there is a confusion. if you look at the policy very closely. We want to be global at the same level and we want to be national. And I don't want to get into the details of how we define national. National is very different from what we understand as national, as was very clearly elaborated by the earlier speakers. I do not get into that. And we want to be global. And if you see that, we want to produce for the global market. And the market, corporate sector dominated policy suggestions. If you read the policy, you will not find anything on unemployment, which is one of when the policy came, this was one of the most important things. And unfortunately, even during the election of 2019, you find that unemployment was the highest. And the person who said that, he was perhaps dismissed from the service. So because we are living in a post-truth era, and this is also based on the post-truth era of empirical evidences rather than pro-truth era of empirical evidences that we generate, So it is very important to see that unemployment is not mentioned. What is mentioned is employability. And this employability is not the responsibility. Sorry. I have only 2 minutes, so I will not take more than that. The employability is the responsibility of the student. What courses they opt for, what type of institutions they attend. It is the responsibility of these individuals, not as a system whereby important interventions are to be done. Since I don't have time, so when you talk about internationalization, what exactly we want to internationalize? This is a question. Only less than 1% of Indian students go abroad for studies. 99% of the students in higher education are studying in India. So when you want to internationalize those students who are going abroad, or you want to internationalize those students who are in India, so you have to touch the curriculum. Is the government ready to change the curriculum according to the international standards, according to the global requirements, even when you talk about we are producing people for the global market? Perhaps not. That's a big question mark. When it comes to the curriculum questions, it was very well elaborated by Professor Anita Rampal. When it comes to the questions of curriculum development, we have a different story than the global picture, than the international picture that you are talking about. I had the chance to organize 1 or 2 summits for Nordic India Summit. What is surprising to say is that the ambassadors in some of the countries said that they are being persuaded, I don't want to use the word pressurized, they are being persuaded to introduce some courses in the name of internationalization. And what is important is that these courses, they say that the first year there were enrollment, but the second year they had a natural death, and third year these courses almost disappeared. I don't need to name the courses which were forcefully introduced in these places and how do they lost. So what I mean to say is that India has to make a distinction between internationalization of Indian higher education or internationalization of higher education in India. These are two different things. Because when you want to cover 99% of the, so I'm stopping. When we cover the 99% of the students who are not going abroad, we have to change the curriculum, touch the curriculum, and if you want to produce global citizens, and if you want to produce for the global market, there is no way other than trying to see that the curriculum changes are made, not by the way that we are doing now, with a more open-ended global picture in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Professor N. Varghese, Dr. N. Varghese. Now I'd like to hand it over to Satyajit Raut.
धन्यवाद। काफ़ी वक्त हो चुका है। 2 छोटे मुद्दे बाकी हैं। एक है AIPSN का ऑनलाइन न्यूज़लेटर अभी शुरू हो रहा है और उसके उद्घाटन के लिए हमने कॉमरेड बिंदु को कहा था। बहुत खुशी की बात है कि कॉमरेड यूसुफ तरिगामी हमारे बीच में है, तो हम सोचते हैं कि कॉमरेड बिंदु और कॉमरेड तरिगामी दोनों इस इनॉग्रेशन में शामिल हो जाएं। यहाँ से कराओ। यहीं से कराओ, यहीं से। वहाँ कहाँ कराओगे?
Comrades, बहुत अच्छा लगा, बहुत ही अच्छा लगा आपके बीच में यहाँ बैठने की इन्होंने मुझे कहा और आज ही कहा। मैं और कुछ नहीं कहूँगा, सिर्फ इतना कि आज तो गुजर ही जाएगा, लेकिन कल के लिए सोचना होगा और आपका यहाँ जमा होना, ये रिजॉल्व फॉर ए बेटर फ्यूचर, बेटर नेशन मीन्स फॉर ए बेटर फ्यूचर फॉर आवर पीपल मीन फॉर अस द रियल स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ आवर नेशन। ये रिजॉल्व हम जैसे लोगों को भी दूर है, हम कहीं आपसे नहीं, हुक्मरानों से, लेकिन आपका इरादा हमें भी एनर्जाइज करता है वहाँ दूर एक ऐसे माहौल में जहाँ डिसअपॉइंटमेंट्स के बगैर सिवा हमें कुछ मिला नहीं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
शुक्रिया कॉमरेड यूसुफ तरेगामी। आपके आने से हमारी भी बहुत हौसला अफजाई होती है। तो अब आगे बढ़ते हैं। मैं काशीनाथ भैया से गुजारिश करूंगा, काशीनाथ चटर्जी से, बीजीवीएस के महासचिव, के धन्यवाद का प्रस्ताव रखें।
दोस्तों बहुत धन्यवाद सत्यजीत जी को। दोस्तों क्योंकि समय काफ़ी कम है, मैंने बहुत 1-1.5 घंटा हम लेट चल रहे हैं, तो सबसे पहले तो हम उन 14 संगठनों को धन्यवाद देंगे जो आज के समय शिक्षा बचाव के लिए, देश बचाव के लिए संघर्ष कर रहे हैं। तो उन तमाम 14 संगठनों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। हम धन्यवाद देंगे ऑल इंडिया पीपुल्स साइंस नेटवर्क और बीजीवीएस के 22 जन संगठनों को जो पूरे गांव शहर में कला जत्था और संवाद करते हुए जो शिक्षा नीति है उसके विरुद्ध में और जो आज स्थिति है, तो उनको हम बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देंगे। हम धन्यवाद देंगे हमारे बीच उपस्थित जो महत्वपूर्ण वक्ता थे, महत्वपूर्ण वक्ता के रूप में जिन्होंने बहुत, जो हम लगातार पिछले 3 साल से काम कर रहे हैं शिक्षा संवाद, शिक्षा नीति को लेकर के, लगातार बनने के बाद, बनने के पूर्व, शिक्षा नीति पारित होने के पहले, तो आज की स्थिति क्या है उस पर पूरे बातचीत रखने के लिए हमारे बीच, और अल्टरनेटिव माने शिक्षा नीति की क्या स्थिति है और उसके बाद विकल्प क्या है, उसके लिए हमारे बीच डॉक्टर आर बिंदु, शिक्षा मंत्री केरल सरकार से आई, उनको हम बहुत धन्यवाद देते हैं। पूरे ऑल इंडिया पीपुल्स साइंस नेटवर्क के धन्यवाद देते हैं। हम ऑनलाइन हमारे बीच उपस्थित थे प्रोफेसर सुप्तो जो अध्यक्ष पूर्व अध्यक्ष थे विश्वविद्यालय अनुदान आयोग का, आज उसका कैसे कचड़ा हो रहा है उसके बारे में और स्थिति क्या है, चुनौती है, उस पर ऑनलाइन बोले, उनको भी हम धन्यवाद देते हैं। हम धन्यवाद देते हैं डॉक्टर वर्गीस जी को, जिन्होंने बहुत अच्छे ढंग से सारे चीजों को हमारे बीच रखे, उनको भी हम धन्यवाद देते हैं। धन्यवाद देते हैं प्रोफेसर अनीता रामपाल जी को, जो हमारे साथ लगातार है और पूरे आंदोलन में लगातार मार्गदर्शन दे रही है, उनको भी। अध्यक्ष मंडली में हमारे बीच अध्यक्ष मंडली के रूप में जो उपस्थित हैं EIPSN के, और उसके साथ साथ आपका विश्वविद्यालय के लगातार नंदिता नारायण जी, जो लगातार लड़ रही है और आज दिल्ली विश्वविद्यालय का जो स्थिति है उसको लेकर के और पूरे देश का उच्च शिक्षा की स्थिति उसमें संघर्ष कर रही है, उनको भी धन्यवाद देते हैं। धन्यवाद देते हैं SFI को, जो पूरे वैकल्पिक शिक्षा क्या होगा उसको लेकर के लगातार संघर्ष कर रहे हैं। साथ में अखिल भारतीय जनविज्ञान नेटवर्क का राष्ट्रीय महासचिव, जो लगातार इस काम के लिए लगी हुई थी, वो एक तरफ गांव में जाकर के संवाद कर रही थी, फिर आकर के दिल्ली में काम कर रही थी, उनको भी धन्यवाद देते हैं। और उसके साथ अखिल भारतीय जनविज्ञान नेटवर्क के राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष सत्यजीत जी, जो हम लोग के सबके लोकप्रिय हैं, और तमाम जो महत्वपूर्ण साथियां उपस्थित हैं, तारागामी जी के साथ लेकर के, और रघु जी, दिनेश जी और तमाम साथी जो स्तंभ है ऑल इंडिया पीपुल साइंस नेटवर्क के, उन तमाम को धन्यवाद देते हैं। धन्यवाद साथियों।
जैसे सत्र की शुरुआत करी है उसी तरह से सत्र का अंत करते हैं गाने के साथ।
हेलो हेलो
हेलो, ज्ञान विज्ञान समिति झारखंड की ओर से सबको झारखंडी जोहार करते हैं। तो अभी हम लोग शिक्षा को ही लेकर के छोटा सा गाना गाएंगे, जो है नागपुरी में ही। नया सोच नया है विचार, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। नया सोच नया है विचार, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। गांव की पाठशाला गांव में रह दे, गांव की पाठशाला गांव में रह दे। बचपना है हमर दादा गाँवे पढ़े दे, बचपना है हमर दादा गाँवे पढ़े दे। होई नहीं कोई पक्षपात, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। होवे न दियो पक्षपात, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। नया सोच नया है विचार, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। नया सोच नया है विचार, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। गांव की पाठशाला गाँव में रह दे, बचपना है हमर दादा गाँव पढ़े दे। गांव की पाठशाला गाँव में रह दे, बचपना है हमर दादा गाँव पढ़े दे। होवी ना के वहाँ पक्षपात, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। होवे ना दियो पक्षपात, सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार। हमारे खजाना है हमारे ही लला, हमारे खजाना है हमारे ही लला। गाँव के बीच चला शिक्षा अधिकार होवे नदियों पक्षपात सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे महंगा हो लग शिक्षा पढ़ भाई कैसे दादा पढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे बढ़ भाई कैसे महंगा हो लग शिक्षा पढ़ भाई कैसे दादा पढ़ भाई कैसे होवे नदियों पक्षपात सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार होवे नदियों पक्षपात सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार नया सोच नया है विचार सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार नया सोच नया है विचार सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार सरकार सत्ता कर नियत ठीक लखे सरकार सत्ता कर नियत साफ लखे गांव के गरीब छवक पढ़े नहीं देवते पढ़े नहीं देवते सरकार सत्ता कर नियत साफ लखे सरकार सत्ता कर नियत साफ लखे गांव के गरीब छवक पढ़े नहीं देते पढ़े नहीं देते गांव के स्कूल बंद करी दे ले दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार होवे नदियों पक्षपात सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार नया सोच नया है विचार सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार नया सोच नया है विचार सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार होवे नदियों पक्षपात सुना दादा हो बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार बचावे चला शिक्षा अधिकार
अब आशा जी के हाथ सौंप रहा हूं।
साथियों हम लोग बहुत लेट हो चुके हैं तो अभी हमारा जो सेशन होगा हम अभी टाइम हुआ है तो 1 बजे से लेके 2:30 तक हम अगला जो हमारा पैरेलल सेशन वो चलाएंगे 2:30 के बाद हम फिर लंच ब्रेक करेंगे तो इसलिए 1 से लेके 2:30 तक हमारा पैरेलल सेशन होगा एक सेशन जो स्कूल एजुकेशन वाला ये यहाँ पर होगा और दूसरा जो सेशन है हायर एजुकेशन है वो सेमिनार हॉल में होगा सॉरी फर्स्ट फ्लोर में फर्स्ट फ्लोर पे सेमिनार हॉल है वहाँ पर हायर एजुकेशन रिसर्च का सेशन होगा तो साथियों से रिक्वेस्ट है कि जल्दी जो इस सेशन में रहना चाहते यहाँ बैठे और बाकी जो हायर एजुकेशन में रहना चाहते वो जल्दी वहाँ जाए स्कूल एजुकेशन सेशन को हायर एजुकेशन सेशन को के प्रेसिडियम में दिनेश अग्रवाल जी IPS हैं प्रोफेसर लोबियाल जी प्रेसिडेंट फिरकुटा और कोई एक साथी IFF2 से होंगे और स्कूल एजुकेशन के जो प्रेसिडियम में डॉक्टर काशीनाथ चटर्जी BGVS CN भारती जनरल सेक्रेटरी SCFI
अरे भाई इसे क्यों मार रहे हो ये बच्चे हैं आखिर गलती तो हो ही जाती है इन्हें माफ कर दो
होटल में बर्तन धोते हैं फिर भी ये भूखे सोते होटल में बर्तन धोते फिर भी ये भूखे सोते होटल में बर्तन धोते हैं फिर भी ये भूखे सोते खलिहानों में लगता जाता बचपन रोजी रोटी के घर में